thanks for doing our breakout session. That'd be great, thank you, sir, yes. Introduce us. I'll introduce us. We'll all have about 5 minutes worth of information. It's really about the conversation, your ideas, possible solutions. And people say, well, these things happen all the time and nothing happens. It's about getting the ideas into your consciousness, right, and disseminating them into your community, and then from there, action. All right. So, one more. It's locked out. Sorry, time.
And you're on YouTube, being locked out.
But we're inclusive. You
Recognize
must
that,
come in.
yeah.
My apologies, I can just stay for a little while and at a book fair,
No
sell a
worries.
book this afternoon.
Good luck. No worries. Okay.
Of South Park by J.C. Penney, Exotic Imports.
Again, good morning and welcome to the Poverty and Consciousness breakout panel. I am Jason Plume. I'm an visiting assistant professor of political science here at Augustana. And my major areas of study are American government, within that illicit substance policy or drug policy. To my immediate left is Dr. Dave Adel. He is a professor of political science as well at Augustana College. And he will be talking about perceptions of law and poverty. Something to this effect. Dave will explain it when he goes and speaks. And then to my far left is Dr. Jeff Ratliff Crane, and he is Associate Dean and Professor of Psychology. His areas of study include stress and substance abuse, as well as mind-body interactions that relate to health. And he'll be discussing how health and well-being interact with poverty. Okay? So with that, we'll let Dave Adel take over.
Okay. Well, I teach at Augie. I've taught here for many, many years, and I happen to be the pre-law advisor. My area of specialization is law and politics. And so none of this makes me an expert on poverty. I am, I guess, more than anything else, hoping to get ideas about what I can use as a teacher, which has perhaps some potential as part of long-term solutions and progress. It's a struggle. I don't know if any of us really were sure what poverty consciousness meant. Somebody else came up with this title. Certainly for me, as a teacher, I'm concerned about what my students bring, the baggage they bring into the classroom. Most of my students are privileged. Whether they see it that way or not is another matter. And not all of them, but by far the most are, and certainly I am too. And so how to, I guess, make that a little less comfortable than it tends to be, that privilege as a teacher, and to have that end up being constructive in its outcome is not just make people angry or something, and only that. That would be really what my professional goals are, my personal motivations are in class. I don't know that me saying a lot about law and politics is particularly going to help us here. And there's things I can say as certainly law and politics relates to poverty. I think in the United States, we have a strong commitment to equality before the law, and we have a tendency then to make that, which is a good thing, make that a kind of a substitute for worrying about who has what in our society. In other words, we end up saying, okay, there's a set of rules, they apply to everybody. We know it doesn't always work that way, so we want to make it that way, and we want to have equality before the law. And I think that actually can be a distraction from some of the issues that really we're talking about today, that it becomes a kind of substitute, a narrowing of focus. And there are many quotations we could talk about. Famous one from Anatole France. He said back in the 19th century, in its majestic equality, the law forbids rich and poor alike to sleep under bridges, beg in the streets, and steal loaves of bread. That equality before the law is, not an answer, you know, to the breadth of social issues that we're concerned with. And I think that, you know, one of the ways that we imagine justice is blindness, you know, blind justice. And that too, you know, that's a problem. That's I think, you know, if you want to talk about poverty consciousness, to me that's a problem. Blindness is part of the problem. And putting blindness as the goal, and I would especially include color blindness in that, actually prevents us at times from seeing the problems that are right in front of our face. And we want to believe, as Americans so badly, in the fairness of our legal system, that we actually become blind to some of the things that are happening, and very important things. And so that, you know, those are some of the, you know, problems that I guess I struggle with as a teacher, and I'd love to talk about if, you know, that suits everybody. I wonder, could we maybe go around and have everybody introduce themselves?
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
Is that appropriate?
Start with Joe.
Mike Bales, since I'm selling a book this afternoon, thing authored. I think I've always been, I studied sociology. I started Iowa State, graduated UNI. I think inequality, that's been a bit of an issue. You know, I know it's around. My jobs haven't paid that well. My situation right now isn't that good. So there's that kind of issue. None of my jobs have been that great paying. Right now the situation's rough.
My name is Maria Briviesco, and I guess I could go on and on about my background, but I guess I'll just briefly say that I was a former migrant farm worker, so I know what poverty is, economic poverty. My family life, though, was very rich. My parents were very loving and supportive, and I think that is a big, you know, that makes a big difference in the world. I have a criminal justice degree, and from doing that, I know some of the sociological issues, including, you know, some of the laws, like the vagrancy laws. You know, how does society create laws, and who do they really benefit? So, I mean, I think we'll talk about that later. And then I came to Iowa in 1980 to go to the University of Iowa Law School. So I am an attorney, and but I am really concerned about the gross injustice that's going on, and it's being done under the rule of law. So what can we do about this?
I'm Sharon Holly. I'm from Davenport, Iowa, and I'm a political organizer. And I'm here because I'm with Maria, and I want to know what we can do. I just think there's so many complicated issues all intertwined that people are just, they don't understand it, so they choose to ignore it. And that's part of the problem. How do we fix it?
I'm Mike Wilcox from Davenport, Iowa, and lived in the Quad Cities for well over 30 years. And way back in the mid-1970s, I too have an undergraduate degree in criminology and had to take sociology classes. One was called social stratification. This is prior to Reagan, and I was shocked that I was this naive kid at wealth and income disparities even back then. So that whole course had a profound impact on me. I came to Iowa as a volunteer, worked at legal aid, all this stuff. Worked as a paralegal, decided I didn't want to do law. So I've been a social worker in child protective services almost the entire time I've been here. So you know, poverty, the whole lack of economic justice is something that gets me riled up.
I'm Kay Pence. I'm from Eldridge, Iowa. I'm the staff rep for the Communication Workers of America, so I work for economic justice and workers' justice as my career.
I'm Margaret Thomas. Also studied political science and adult education, and interested in perspective transformation. And now I've worked in journalism and adult education, GED and ESL teaching.
I'm just here to watch.
Yes.
My name is CJ. I've been in this Quad Cities for a couple of years now. My interest is in, I'm a musician and I am a chef and a nutritionist. I'm very interested in food justice. I have been raised in areas of poverty all my life. Never knew that it was poverty until much later. But as an adult, I have enjoyed pretty good success as a entrepreneur. So I've always been interested in community, children, food, family, and whatever moves that needle forward for unity for everyone. And so it's good to be here.
Thank you. Just say one thing, I'm glad to see we have a diversity of occupations, professions, as well, and how poverty affects that. It's not just poverty, right? It's disparity of wealth we're talking about, working families and such. Yeah. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah. So as Jason mentioned, I'm Jeff Ratliff-Crane, I'm an associate dean, also background in psychology. And one of the things that I'm hoping to bring into this discussion is a little bit of the ways we consider both the individual but also the contexts. And even in going around and discussing, we've talked about some of our interests in poverty, of wealth inequality from both a contextual, policy level, social level, you know, you're talking about growing up, you know, areas of poverty, the migrant farm background, but then within that, individual, and some of the individual attitudes, individual behaviors. Jason had mentioned, you know, drug policies and behaviors. It's on both ends of that thing. And in bringing up, Mike brought up the complexity of the issue that we're working with. Part of the complexity is that poverty affects people at an individual level, but then it also continues on and reflects back on a larger social interaction, family interaction, impacting things that way, then further impacting not only that individual, but the individuals that they're working with and so on. And finding ways, I mean, similar to public health kinds of issues, of not trying to tackle the entire thing, and that's where it gets to be too large and too complex, but what are the pieces that maybe you can try to, again, I think, you know, some of the things that you mentioned in your talk too, David, kind of brought that. So maybe that's, you know, focusing in on law and law, you know, some of the policies and things here, and there were a couple of mentions related to that might be a piece that we can take a look at. And, but we also intended this discussion to really be shaped by whoever showed up. And so we're, you know, we want this, you know, rather than we're going to present, let's bring this out. So I think, so thank you for sharing some of the reasons what brings you here and some of the ways that you're interested.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I just want to add this. So when I heard this term, consciousness of poverty, or poverty consciousness, immediately the gentleman who mentioned it, a community member, was talking about having knowledge of your identity, right? Being aware of what status you are and such. But I immediately thought the other way, that lack of knowledge, and being a political scientist, lack of knowledge of institutions, because institutions, though we don't have to rely on them 100%, do give us resources towards opportunities in life to develop our life, right? And if you are in poverty, or if you're working poor, if you're even working class, you need these opportunities. So that's what I thought of. And again, how do poor people, if you want to use that term, how do they garner this knowledge? Because they're left out. They're either working all day, or they're trying to figure out, they're trying to scramble for the pieces in their life, and they miss out on how to navigate those institutions. I know myself, growing up in a working class home, navigating the educational system, believe it or not, was very difficult. But people that are 3, 4, 5 generations deep with master's degrees, it's automatic, almost just passed down to them. So that was my experience. But I thought, you know, as somebody pointed out, you don't have to be monetarily wealthy. Sure, it'd all be nice if you're all wealthy, but you can be what I like to call rich of soul, right? Grow up in a good, strong family. And in turn, that family can give you that knowledge, pass that knowledge on. But for most of us out there, you're just satellites barely anchored to the rest of society if you are working poor or abject poverty. So I thought of some areas to look at with this, and you know, that are important to gain that knowledge and understanding of institutions. First one I thought about, again, was education, right? how to navigate those processes, and they can be as simple as applications, standards, requirements. I thought about, what about the courts, the legal system? Do poor people or working poor really have a chance when they go into family court? Or when they're arraigned on a misdemeanor or just an infraction? Do they even stand a chance? Because they don't even know that the process works. But there are stratifications of society that do have resources out there to tell them about this. But I think a lot of people, especially the working poor, slip through the cracks and don't get that knowledge. And I thought about bail, simple things like bail hearings, family court again. How about law enforcement? And this goes towards drug policy, police practices. And we've heard a lot about stop and frisk. I had somebody interviewed me the other day, and they say, is this a poor policy? I go, I don't know if it's a poor policy. I think it's definitely a poor police practice. And it targets minorities. It targets poor people, right? Majority of people that are arrested through stop and frisk are lower social economic status. How can we bring that awareness, that knowledge to people of lower social economic status and that are trying to develop out? And the last one would be, and this is a hot topic today, institutes of health. I'm not just talking about having health insurance or accessing services. I'm talking about knowledge of health, right? Dietary issues, nutritional issues, psychological, mental health issues. And I think people that are the working poor don't know about that information, and this just adds to the cycle. So that's where I'm coming from when we talk about this consciousness of poverty. With that, open it up to any questions or comments you have, really anything. Please.
Or even deriving from some of the things you've heard today or brought in today. Maybe some areas, it's that question of what to do. Are there, all of us would have, an equal say of what that might be to maybe target or look at first. So thinking of some of the things that came to mind, what would you want to target?
Well, I studied sociology and psychology in that. I think when you're in a rough situation, there's a balance between what you have to do to pull yourself out of the situation. I think there's the blaming the victim. I think probably some action isn't taken because people are blamed as victims. I ended up my situation because I was in a job and the company, I'm sure, built or did with huge tax breaks, and it treats its people terribly. I'm not here to blast a particular company, but I couldn't stay awake at the job, and my insurance had been pulled, so I couldn't even, afford to go to sleep laughing at. Then, I lost my job, my unemployment was cut, and I was treated like a criminal for that by the unemployment hearing things. I had a difficulty, and they were all calling it misconduct. But my insurance was pulled, so I couldn't even do anything really to address the issue. And I did everything I can, short of, getting a lot of, sleep labs and all that kind of stuff.
And that's, that ends up really, on that individual level, where many of these things kind of play out. We talk about, how oftentimes people are one accident, one illness, or away from, from poverty. And the differences of buffer, that, and how that ends up driving people to try to, go past that, to go into the word sick.
That day where I couldn't stay awake, I wasn't feeling that well, but, if I missed too many days, I was going to be in trouble. And the point is, the job didn't even pay all that well. I was going through all this grief.
I think on an individual basis, I think what you brought up was a list of things that you can do on a pragmatic basis, that you can actually do something, but I call that Band-Aid approach. We really have a systemic problem. It is huge. I think that the poverty that I experienced growing up is very different from the poverty that's being experienced now. It has to do with what the main speaker's talking about. We have systematically set up a system where we don't have a chance. You don't have a chance. The average individual does not have a chance. So I thought that we talk about the psychology and sociology of the wealthy. What is it why do they want $540 billion?
Yeah.
They're sick. Seriously, they're sick and they need help. That's what, we keep talking about the poor.
Right.
That, we are actually good, nice people. We want to work. We all want to be meaningfully engaged in an activity. Nobody wants to sit at home. I don't. If you have mental health, You don't just wanna sit at home, watch TV and just do nothing. Okay, we all wanna do poor or lazy, it's blaming the victim, but you know, I'm tired of that. I mean, I studied blaming the victim in 1975. Let's move on. I think it's a systemic thing. Let's look at the 400 families that keep wanting more and say no. You know, one of the things I wanna do is let's make it a requirement that everybody be registered to vote and vote, everybody. I mean, I wanted to be a little bit more on the punitive side, but how are we gonna make people vote? If you're gonna get any type of aid, any type of tax credit, you are required to vote. We have to get the masses to wake up and participate in this democracy. The apathy is what's making this country really, bad. It's apathy, and it has to do that we have the too much entertainment, too much, you're distracted by things that don't mean anything.
Can I add to that? No, what I was trying to say was, I believe it's systemic. There's no doubt about that. It's built into the system. And then what I was saying is that poverty is used to keep people out of the political system, out of the institutions. I think it's up to the institutions and people to give resources, ideas, this consciousness, right, about how to raise people up, how they can, it's not on them. It's not blaming the victim. And you're right, it's those people in charge, the wealthy few, that keep it that way. They play it against one another.
Because one of the things that I saw that causes a lot of the poverty is the easy credit. I mean, growing up, you could not get credit. I mean, it was hard for you to get credit. Now you're in high school and they give you a credit card. You know, they put you in debt before you even graduate from high school. And now they're writing the law so that you can't even bankrupt them out. You cannot get a fresh start anymore. I mean, I am like, and I'm a lawyer. So, I can go up and go to the system, but the system is already working against you. The rules are against you. You cannot, if you have student loan debt, you know what? You can't bankrupt that out. Who decided that?
Well, it's interesting because it also points out the amount of money that actually is available in the economy amongst our poor. If you look at those quick loan places, the credit cards, where we see a concentration of alcohol and package stores, there's a lot of money that's coming out of our more impoverished neighborhoods. And, but they're targeted businesses and targeted in such a way that are preying on people's vulnerabilities.
Payday loans.
There is exploitation. I think Wells Fargo, maybe I shouldn't mention a particular company, I think they just drain people.
We'll put
for
it
their
on
charges.
Wells Fargo has the other one.
I'm on camera, I better watch it. But they obviously credit unions better, but Wells Fargo, they're a meals program for the poor. Nothing, talk about exploitation. They say they're all nice and that, but they've actually killed people, their charges. And I think a lot of these banks, unless you have a high balance, there's going to be some kind of charge just kind of draining your money away.
Well, and I think that David, you brought up that, you're privileged. I know I'm privileged. Same as Maria, even though, she had a family, she had a support system. And when you look at some of these people that don't have support systems, you realize how valuable that is. And I had the luck of going to work at a union company. I didn't organize a union, it was already there. I had the advantages of it. I know that I had advantages that other people didn't. And then now as a union rep, I'm trying to save people's jobs who are being fired for 2-minute tardies because they don't have a reliable car to get to work. There's no public transportation for them to get to work. And so then, they're irresponsible and they get fired. And their coworkers will look at them and say, he can't come to work on time.
It circles back around to blame the individual, sure.
Yeah.
I think, I've been making some notes here, that one thing we tend to do is individualize structural issues in the economy that, you get paid low wages and you can't find a decent job. They just want to blame the victim, he just wants to talk about unemployment benefits. So there's that aspect of it. And I think a certain degree poverty is especially here, you can't see it. You don't readily see it unless you see someone standing by it's like CO2. I'm a big environmentalist. CO2 that you can't see it, but it's polluting, it's causing.
It affects everything, sure.
Yeah. And I think you intertwine it with our political system, with Citizens United and McCutcheon and all the Supreme Court decisions and all the money, and you wonder why people are apathetic. That's one reason why. And just in my own summation of things is, if if there's anything that's more, maybe more pervasive than racism and bigotry is corruption and from wealth and greed and systems that are just corrupt. I think Charles Ferguson's book, Predatory Nation, looks at Wall Street and all the criminal behavior there. And in essence, I'm privileged. I work in state government. I have a union. I have good benefits. I have a defined pension plan. Man, I realize how good I got because of a union. And of course, they're being decimated.
Well, we're in a real pickle. We have 6 media conglomerates that control 95% of the information outlets in this country. Just 6. They control the message. How can we get the message out? And I'm going to share something very personal with you that is totally ironic right now, right this moment. Is there anybody here who thinks I'm lazy? I don't see any hands going on. I was up until about 2:30 this morning making 200 copies of this thing after I had composed it. When I was downstairs, I got a call from my wife. Went into my checking account online to see what the status was. And she found out that the account that I had, like, I don't know, $7, $9 in, was in the negative 140 some odd dollars. What happened? She said something about a court order. I'd gotten something in the mail, not delivered, signed, no proof that I ever got it, something about a court hearing back east. And not only did I not have the time to go, but I didn't have the money for the gas to drive 6 hours round trip to go to that court. I think there may be a connection. But the system is such that it beats people. It beats people up. And I'll tell you, pardon my French, what the fuck am I gonna do? And, you know, if you go down the street and you see somebody on the sidewalk and they're bleeding, and if you don't stop the bleeding, they're gonna die. And you have the ability to stop the bleeding. You know, you've got a scarf that you can use as a tourniquet. But if you don't make it to the bank in time, you won't have the money to pay the rent or whatever, and you know, you'll get an eviction notice. What are you gonna do? You're gonna stop the bleeding.
I think Bob's right. It's so you work as much as you can, take a little credit. That credit is tied into legal ramifications, which can in turn lock you into more debt, and then you're penalized because your mobility is limited. You cannot spend to move or spend to get a job or spend for clothes. And in turn, it's just not only a cycle, that it's a nexus of poverty.
We were doing fine before the Great Recession. We were financing homes and businesses. Before that, I did financial planning. I wrote some plans for some very wealthy individuals. Before that, I had an outpatient drug counseling agency working with ex-offenders. Before that, I was a factory worker going to college. But yeah, the system is definitely weird. And I don't get it. Why that guy is getting paid nearly $2 million a week.
So then how do we propose to navigate in a system that is designed to keep you out of that system? I mean, because it sounds like we perpetuate the same thing over again, and we are the masses talking about a small segment of the population, and we're playing into the rules that they have set. And we think that their rules are going to navigate so that we can.
Right, we can't play by their rules and win.
No.
Right.
And so why do we keep trying to play by the same rules when we can make our own house? We can design our own house so that everyone eats, and it's not based on the rules that don't work for the masses. The rules work for the ones who set the rules.
Mm-hmm.
It works just fine for them.
Control the media.
They don't know what you're talking about. You've got plenty. I mean, you know, you look good to me. So, I mean, you know, if you can't get in your car and it doesn't work, get on the bus. So why do we suspect in our right-thinking mind that going by those rules is going to affect any change at all? I'm perplexed by it, because the thing, they say that what is the definition of crazy? Or,
Oh, yeah. Do the same thing.
yeah,
Although
so
I
it's
expect different results.
not the 6 companies or the 1% that are crazy at all. It's the masses that are proving over and over again to be completely insane. So we can sit here and we can talk all day about food injustice, and this is what the rich are doing, and they're doing this. Well, I'm gonna vote. I'm telling you, I've been voting a long time, and I've been, you know, and Bob tries to tell me, you know, I got faith, Bob. I'm working, Bob. Yep, I'm doing this, Bob. But I can't go into your house and tell you what to eat unless you come to me and say, how can I can't go into your house and change your rules. I can't do it. That's your house. I have to design my own house and construct it with the people who want to live with me. And then we sit at the table and we make a decision. Otherwise, I'm just, I don't know.
I love what you're saying, which is, you know, you keep banging your head against the wall. Okay, I run for office twice, all right? I live in Bettendorf, Iowa. I run as a Democrat, okay?
Don't want to get in trouble.
So, I mean, I knew the first time around, I knew that I was basically the sacrificial lamb. You know, I was asked to run against a lady who'd been running unopposed.
You
know,
did damn well in both elections, Maria.
But damn well is not good enough. I'm very competitive too. I want to win. And the thing is, you can't win in that district. So here's what I'm talking about. What really would bring about change, and we're just talking. It's a revolution. You know, a revolution. But I am an attorney, and I believe that, and I'm also an optimist. I'm a person of great faith. I really believe that the way our founding fathers set up this country, we can still make it work. But we need to stop being apathetic. That's why we need to vote. You know how many people voted November 4th? And if they had come out to vote, if the Democrats had come out to vote, I would have won. The Democrats stayed home. And why did they stay home?
They stayed home because they're disgusted in the political system, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. I almost didn't vote the first time in my life.
The thing is, I had events. I would publicize it. Come and talk to me. Come and talk about what I believe in and what I'm going to do for you. Nobody
But then
comes.
you walk into their house.
I knocked on their
Tell them
doors,
what
and
to
guess
do.
what? Nobody. Let me say, a lot of people were upset that I was invading their privacy by knocking on their doors. They didn't want me knocking on their doors. I left. I got a recorded message from a lady. And I'm going to keep it there. It says, "Don't you ever come back to my house. This is private property, and leave your filth." I left my little, calling card about why I was running for office.
I want to go visit her.
No, seriously, we have a lot of people that are crazy, okay? And people didn't want to pick up their phone. You know what? I was one of those. And I've been thinking, I think a lot. I love what you do, by the way, with your books. I think that the fact that there's so much money, millions, $67 million spent on negative ads, that's a very sophisticated way of voter suppression.
Absolutely.
That suppressed the people.
Yeah, it is voter
And that's,
suppression.
they got so disgusted they stayed home. The people that run those conservative think tanks are way ahead of us. They're marketing shit to us, and we're buying it.
And we're buying it over and over
And
again.
if you had more money and you were able to buy the ads, you would have had the media's attention. They gave phony Joni Ernst a free ride, okay? They gave a lot of people a free ride because they know which side of the bread is buttered. And I've seen that.
Bob, absolutely not true, okay? That is not how journalism works.
That's my experience.
That's the reason that people get a free ride is that there are so few journalists who are working. And the powers that be, if you as a reporter do, for instance, a critical story examining, is Joni Ernst smart enough to be a U.S. Senator? The political pressure would be brought on the editors
To not run it.
No, it might run. You might get in the paper, but what will happen is, the political reporter will find that pretty soon their job is writing about cats. And so my point is, the problem is not with the working journalists, it is with the publishers who are no longer standing up. Most publishers in this country, even of not very good newspapers, when some well and connected person would call and say, well, I don't want in the paper that my son got arrested for drunk driving, would say, well, I'm sorry about that, but our policy is we report all drunk driving arrests and your son's gonna be reported like everybody else. That's gone.
Yes, it is.
And not completely, but it's
And they're
radically,
no longer advertising that paper.
it's radically diminished.
Yes.
And I mean, the real problem there is that we are not raising serious questions about candidates, and that includes a whole bunch of Democrats. I don't. This is not a.
That's right.
So, but you know, no, the only newsroom in America that issues marching orders is Fox. It's the only one, and it's very clear they do, because you can turn on the show all day long, and if you watch any other place, they'll show the same people all day long using variations of the same phrase. Nobody else does that, and that's because everybody there understands that they're not in a news organization, they're a propaganda organization. And they're extremely well paid.
Well, when you go to a political debate and the first question they ask is about polls, who cares about polls? We want to know what the issues are and what you feel about the issues. And you go to the political debates and nobody asks any
Because
questions.
it's cheap and easy to ask about those. And so people should object to that.
That's the other thing, is
Yeah.
I don't think no one should participate in polls anymore. They call you and ask for your opinion, say no. Because I think the fact that like Jack Hatch, he was behind from, even before he announced. His campaign never picked up steam, because he was always behind in the polls. Nobody wants to back a loser, you know? He was 29% behind.
Well, I
And
think,
so pollings are not good. So
I
let's
think the
not
whole
participate in
system
them.
is rigged partly, and that's part of the system thing, is gerrymandering, voter ID laws. Tom Hartman he aired a video clip, or audio clip from the 1960s from a guy, Jude Walensky, stating the Republicans didn't want people to vote because, you know, it doesn't favor them. And that's been kind of an ongoing
Can I
strategy.
put my 2 cents in?
Yes, yes.
During all the campaigns that I've worked, this campaign, I talked to a lot of people, and they were so confused. The media, the reporters, they thought they could trust. We're taking sides, and they're not supposed to do that. It was confusing them.
Which campaign are you talking
This past
about?
election.
The whole election cycle.
Yeah, the whole election cycle. And a lot of them don't understand how our government works.
Right, that's exactly right.
They cannot rationalize. When they hear one side say this and then the other side say that, they don't have the education to say, wait a minute, that can't happen. They can't do that because that's not the way our government works. Education is the bottom line to a lot of this.
Poverty or
And it's
working
just-
poor is a very.
And we have to find a way to get people educated. I told Jack Hatch, I said, I volunteer to offer a free course in state and local government to all our adults. Me just laughed, he said, and make it mandatory, because so many people have no clue. Our state and local government is so different than our national government. And people don't know
But
that.
isn't it
They don't-
designed to not know? Isn't it designed so that the masses don't really understand how it all
should
works?
not-
And
Like
that
they-
all of
We
these
all-
ads
what
are
works is
about
everybody
going
should
after?
know. Everybody should know how their government works, especially the national government.
Right, and you don't
How
learn
can
it
you
in
make
school.
an
and you-
education decision on who you're gonna vote for? Or to tell the difference between what that person on that station is saying and what person on that station is saying, between like CNN and Fox News. How can you rationalize? Because you know that in our government, that cannot happen.
Yeah, but who's got time for that, and they're trying to eat?
Exactly.
I mean, if it's.
It has to happen though, that's how,
It
we're gonna
does
have to
happen.
find a way.
It does have to happen, but it's
We're
not
gonna have to
even
find a
set up in
way
the education
to-
system so that you know how the government
It
works.
starts in grade school.
In what grade school?
In junior high, we have government courses.
Well, I think
I
there's
went
a,
all the way through
I think the
school.
point coming out of this is that
Wasn't
just
in
one
high school.
institution can carry the day.
There-
And it's an awareness, not just in education or political arenas, but it's, you said it's systemic, it's system-wide as well. It's very difficult, right, to disseminate that information.
That
There are
is
two
the bottom
comments I
line.
have. One, it ought to be more preeminent. There's a website that exposes the lies of candidates. Branstad's one big thing about Jack Hatch is alive. Channel 8 mentioned it in their news, but most people don't get it. They just hear the lies, don't get how they're refuted. And the other thing when it comes to the area of poverty, even if Barack Obama about it, because it's not a popular issue, it's more middle class stuff, and the stuff about poverty and all the worst related stuff isn't even mentioned. It's not even an issue. It's because it's unpopular to talk
This
about.
last election, we had 2 candidates for him on poverty issues in Scott County.
Really?
Yep, 2 of them. The second one, nobody showed up.
Ooh.
Nobody except the people that were volunteering to make it happen.
People are so frustrated. They don't know what to believe. And so they just choose to just ignore it.
Yeah, let the lions maul at each
Yeah.
other and
And so
forget
they
about
don't
it.
come out and vote.
Although, you know, as you pointed out, I mean, I think there are some ways that that's been almost contrived and allowed to happen. I'm gonna go back to something you were saying though. I wanna ask you, do you feel that that fourth pillar of government is essentially failing? Or
Oh, you mean journalism?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
but and the problem is in a couple of areas. First of all, on the national and the high level, every journalist that you see on TV is rich. I mean, the lowest paid correspondents for the networks now are probably at the $250,000 to $300,000 a year at the very bottom, and a lot of people you see make multi-million-dollar annual incomes. So Katie Couric's pay to be the anchor at CBS News was greater than the combined total budgets of Morning Edition and All Things Considered.
I heard that.
And so, you know, when I went into journalism in the 60s, it was blue-collar intellectuals. And now it's a lot of, at the national level, it's a lot of trust fund kids. Who, you know, and if you grow up after all, where everything is working well, and mom and dad take you skiing at Switzerland in the summer and scuba diving at the Caribbean in the winter, I'm sorry, what's the problem here? I don't get it. So there's a real class issue. And then secondly, the fastest disappearing white-collar job in America is journalist. And so that's had 2 effects. One is there's not enough people to do the work, and most of them do not understand how government works. Sharon, is that right? You are exactly correct about that. They have, you know, if you're a reporter, you should know that grand juries don't return verdicts, as I heard on the TV this morning, that grand juries hand indictments up, not down. Judges hand decisions down. Simple things like that, you know, that you have to have a unanimous vote to convict somebody of a criminal offense. And there are a lot of journalists who do not, including, by the way, one of the senior editors to my absolute shock at the New York Times when I worked there, who thought that grand juries handed indictments down because they sat in the highest seats in the courtroom. He apparently never turned on Law and Order. But the related problem is the collapse of what's called beat coverage. There are city councils, well, my county legislature gets a reporter at its sessions like once a year. Nobody covers the meetings. School boards, my local weekly newspaper hasn't covered the Brighton Town Council or the school board, and there are about 40,000 people where I live, in years. And so, you know, that's a real underlying problem. And why don't they do it? Because people aren't buying the news. Why are people not paying for subscriptions to the newspaper? Because they don't have money to spend. You know, it's a whole vicious downward cycle.
Can I add one to that? I know there's about a handful, and back this up if you will, a handful of full-time reporters who specialize in labor relations.
Oh, there's almost nobody.
Almost nobody. I think New York Times has one maybe at this point.
Oh, that's all they've ever had.
All I had, okay, but still, and that would be a needed focus for people to understand the economic situation in America to start.
There's another issue too. It's raising false issues, like Republicans arguing against abortions when they're the issues of do people have enough to eat? Does everyone have a roof over their heads? And there's talk that I think, I'm picking on Republicans, I don't like them anyway, but I think there's talk that they're raising issues like that so they're distracted from the real issues.
Sure.
And people don't realize that when they say they're gonna sue the president for some stupid thing, they're using our tax dollars.
Right.
That's a lot of wasted money. People don't know that.
To say that they'll sue the president, not to sue the president, but maybe we'll drag it out again, yeah. But, you know, going back to your point about education, you know, I mean, one of the assumptions is always coming back to the schools, which is an important conduit. But, you know, you've got one type of captive audience. I'm tying it back to the media, I mean, and ways, you know, the ways that beyond school, so many of us receive education is through these other outlets. And that's or really being.
We know the
failed.
biggest way scientists learn about other scientists is through by reading newspapers.
But people don't have time, like she said. Now people don't have time. So, and you have to do a lot of studying, I think.
lot.
So we need to find a way to educate people like with short, I don't know, a little bit at a time.
Sound
In
bite?
other words, just
Yeah.
it's exactly
No.
how Fox has
Right.
packaged it. And by, by not having actual debate, by not actual challenging, it's more of a placating kind of approach of information, that information quotes, to reinforce as opposed to inform. And, it is, you describe it as propaganda, and it's very quick and effective.
Jeff, right?
Yes.
When I walked in the first time, you were discussing consciousness of poverty. And I assume that was regarding people who are poor's awareness of themselves, or is that society's awareness of the problem?
It's both, really.
It's both.
It's both.
Okay.
Somebody else came up with that name, so we
It's
were
just-
sure.
I mean, actually, it's a very, very important thing, because
Yes.
I can tell you I speak to all sorts of different groups, and there's an enormous segment of this country that does not believe anyone goes hungry, that does not understand that there are children going to public schools who live in cars, in cold cities like where I am in Rochester, New York.
Well, it's not new, that's a niece,
But they're in denial about this, and people are very uncomfortable with it. There is some change going on, at least where I live. In Rochester, New York, for the last year and a half, my wife runs the Community Foundation. They did a big study on poverty. Rochester is the 5th poorest city in America, and among cities of its size class, it is the 2nd highest level of extreme poverty, which is less than half the official poverty rate of income. Most of the poor people do not live in the city. Everybody assumes, oh, it's everybody's poor in the city. No, most of the poor people live in the suburbs and in the county. And one effect of the last, I guess the report's been out for 11 months, came out in December of 2013, is that my wife went and spoke to a group of very affluent people, older people the other night, and the room was absolutely packed with people, and their basic thing was, we didn't know this. Really? My God. And I've looked at these numbers, and they're unbelievable. They're not unbelievable in the sense you can't believe them. It's like, this is horrendous. What do we do about this? So I think that the institutions that can do that, I mean, you have a community foundation here in Quad Cities, at least on one side of the river. It probably hasn't been both. They in United Way should be making sure that people know the data and are putting it out there and are speaking all over the place about how many people are showing up at food banks, who's showing up at food banks. I'm trying to locate some children from an incident in a reasonably affluent town in Massachusetts where they send, as many communities have them now, food packs home on the weekend with children. And there were some children beaten up by other children. And I assumed it was, the rich kid beating up on the poor kids. No, it was other poor kids beating up on other poor kids because they didn't have enough food at home to steal their food.
What
Right,
time was
and
that?
they take their
Huh?
food
What
back
time
home.
was that?
And I don't want to go to because I want to find this and do my story. But I mean, I suspect this is not all that uncommon, okay? And I'm trying to find the kids in the actual incident, but I want to talk to them. I think there's a real problem with awareness, and the way you get awareness is you get the institutions in your community whose job it is to be looking forward. Community Foundation in particular should be the organization that is looking at the future needs of your community.
Should be, why now, why aren't they?
Well, so a lot of them are. I mean, many are not, but many
They
are.
help fund our film series on poverty.
Yeah, and United Way, other organizations, and making awareness about this, and you've got to tell people again and again and again. If you open a new business, is it John?
Jason.
Jason, if you open a new business tomorrow and went to the Argus Dispatch and the Quad City Times and TV stations and said, I want one big ad campaign, we're gonna run it this weekend, they would all say, are you out of your mind? You wanna run an ad on TV, 5 times a day, every day for the next year, even if it's a little quick short ad, because different people look at different times, and you wanna reiterate the message. And that's why, people come up with slogans, they have distinctive bottles of shampoo. It's to get that in your mind for when you want to act. And if we want to address this, we gotta learn how to market. That's what the 12 big organizations in Washington and Fox are about, marketing, ideological marketing. You gotta learn how to market. But there are institutions you can turn to that can deal with this, and I would go to the Community Foundation, United Way, and the leaders of the most affluent churches in town, and try to get them all to a meeting and say, what are you doing about your duty? And cite them their own scripture.
I think sometimes the media and that, I think we're crisis oriented, like homelessness was very much in the forefront when John Lewis's and the house had burned down. So they ran the story, then it ran its course and nothing was mentioned again. Maybe there ought to be something in papers, like you got drunk arrests, maybe
Well,
it ought to be
well,
the number of statistics of people in
But
shelters.
it's also the job of
this type
finding
stuff.
ways to keep coming back and saying the same thing in different ways and new ways to do it again and again and again. The casino industry in Atlantic City and Las Vegas gets coverage every month of the win, or when I covered Atlantic City, as I used to write it, the loss. Because the player's loss is the same as the house's win, right? Why not make an effort then to every month, what are the statistics of the food bank? And not just how many people were served, but how many were children, how many were families with kids into this, how many were families where there are two parents who are both out of work, things like that, and keep finding new ways to do it.
There are statistics being taken of those. There's a lot of food banks in the area. Now, one of my.
But getting it published was my point. Getting it on TV.
Well, on TV. Well, here's the thing, though. This is. I think. Okay, and at the risk of sounding too conservative and not caring, the super poor people can get money. It's the people falling through the cracks. And I think maybe this is the other workout session. Who defines poverty? I think defining poverty at $6,000 a year, that's obscene, that's ridiculous. Those people are gonna get something. It's the working poor. I think maybe a solution, we should all work for this. Anybody making less than $75,000 is poor. You get free everything. Free food, free college, free whatever. And then,
I think it's called Saudi Arabia, but yes.
Why not? Why not? The thing is, who can live on, what's the federally property rate income? I don't even know what it is.
For a family of four, it's about $25,000.
A year?
Yeah.
We need
For a
more
single
columnists.
person, it's around 9 or 10,000.
Who can live on that?
We need more columnists like this columnist in the Des Moines Register, Reka Besu. She's had
Yeah.
awesome columns about women's issues. She had something about some poor woman who lost her license, and she's about ready to be thrown in jail because she's driving her car without a license to get to work so she could feed her family. The issues of that, and then that'd be a call for avenues for her to straighten out her situation. We need more columnists like that. She's very sensitive to a lot of
So
causes.
have you written a letter to the Des Moines Register saying, please, keep running this stuff?
That's my
Spend
idea.
46 cents,
That's my
Twice a
idea.
time. Is it about say times for it? I thought you said
We
Des Moines
need to
Register.
all.
She's the Des Moines Register, Reka
Yeah.
We
Besu.
need to all help
He
Jon
was
Stewart buy CNN.
Yep.
I will pitch in $5.
I gotta go. I've
Well,
got
one of the
something to eat.
problems is the big media
Thanks.
that they have a different set of facts they're pushing. They're pushing that the debt has tripled under Barack Obama. They just a totally different set of facts, and they're pounding it.
Well, and that's where we come in, and we pound it and pound it and pound it, what the reality is in the communities. We hold coffee meetings, okay, we've got the data available, okay? I've got the entire database for the state of Iowa of all the registered voters available to me. And we can hold community meetings, go into the community and pass on this information. And there are people on this side of the river also who have access to that information and are planning on doing that. And Sharon, I welcome you to join us, okay, with your information about how government works. Maria,
Very good.
we're having conversations about you running for the county board.
We can
Okay.
protest
Yeah,
our media.
you can do that.
You should.
There you go.
You got a better chance than running in a Republican, and you did damn well. You came within, what, about 4 points?
Yeah. That's what, I work really hard. I
I
don't know what
know.
else you can do.
What did you run for?
I ran for the state senate
In
Last
the
time.
suburb.
in Bettendorf, Iowa.
Oh, is that right? The other suburb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Statewide.
and she ran for state rep before.
And wait a minute, in Bettendorf, Rich Bettendorf, and you came within 4 points?
Yeah, right.
What's wrong?
Because of what's wrong. Well,
Okay, I think it's about time to wrap up. I want to thank citizens, community members for coming out, Bob, and David for joining us as well. A special visit, thanks. You know, at the very least, we communicated, right? And maybe we can go out and take some action in the community, or at least the information, pass the information on to somebody else and disseminate that.
Yeah, I think we're planning, according to the way that we envisioned the timing today, is that we're planning on coming together about 12:30.
Oh, 12:30.
12:30
I'm
or
sorry.
1:30
Okay.
for the roundtable discussion.
David will be sharing our summarizations for that.
So you want to go for
Right,
4
is
minutes?
that what that should?
Sure, it's up to you. I didn't know. I wasn't sure if it was 4:15 or that you were meeting. It's 12:30 that you said.
Yeah, 12:30 to 1:30 roundtable discussion. So, you know, we can break that about quarter past or 20 past, and give people a little time to go to the bathroom and get some refreshments and so on, and then we'll wrap up.
All right. So I think it might be helpful to hear what you're hearing as a take. Bo, do you want the rest of the group to hear when we reconvene?
I'm going to spread the news session.
That's the main points. During the roundtable, what would you like shared as far as that?
well, I'm not gonna be there, but I would love for someone to talk about how the problem of poverty, to really have important, big change, is that it's gotta be addressed at a systemic level. And I think it's done by having, you know, the journalists addressing it, professors in colleges, education. In fact, a lot of the public education, the teachers in Bettendorf, maybe not just in Bettendorf, they're Republicans and they are not teaching the kids really how to think logically. I think everybody needs to have a logics class before they graduate from high school. They need to be able to think analytically.
I'm with you.
All right, so that's number one, because we need to have an informed citizenry to have a good democracy. Okay, one of the things that I like to say is that I want everybody to vote, but if you're not an informed voter, it really doesn't mean anything. But you know what? They're still afraid of people voting, because here in this country, the vote of a pauper is weighed the same as the vote of a billionaire. And there's more of us than them. And that's why they're still trying to do voter suppression with voter ID laws, the gerrymandering. They're still afraid of us. That's why I still have hope. I think we can still work within the system. I don't think we have to go to an armed revolution. You know, but some people are getting there. I mean, you know, the nuts that believe in the Second Amendment, you know, totally, they're ready. They're ready to take on the government, you know. I'm not there. I think that we can still make it work. But we gotta do it through education.
Education.
Education changed my
We
world,
need to find a
changed
way.
my life. And protect the Constitution.
That's right. And we need to teach people they need to remember what the Constitution says. A lot of people have no idea, and they get it all mixed up with what one person says, then, you know, it's passed on. Nobody really knows what it's.
Sharon, if anything's scary about that, I teach 3 Ls, few 2 Ls, but mostly third-year law students. Almost none of them have ever just sat down and read it. It's only 7,000 words.
Yeah, and people don't realize that they can protest their media. They can do that. I don't know why they're not doing it. Why don't they protest? We're
Pocket diet of
slow.
the Constitution.
should.
Everybody should
We
have
should.
it.
Nobody does that.
Why
We have
not?
the right to protest in our community, our own media.
You can
Nobody knows that, nobody realizes that, but they'll protest the lady that's in her backyard in a bikini. How dare her? Some bathe in the backyard in her bikini, topless or something like
Protest
that.
the speech, Mike, do you want-
Oh, I think part of all this is you can't separate poverty from our political system and how we run campaigns, and there needs to be major changes. Citizens United, get all the money out of it, go to public financing.
Yes.
Then people will see that their vote will count.
In the 2 states that tried that, Maine and Arizona, it turned out incumbents got thrown out. There's some good political science papers, you've probably seen them, like, you're
Oh,
good
these-
political
no, those
science.
are the
Yeah,
outside books.
about how people got thrown out.
Well, the incumbents are almost locked to national to get reelected.
Right, but if we went to public finance, I think you would see a lot of incumbents go out.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
it depends
right.
on if at the level of the financing, traditionally the research says that low financing benefits incumbents.
Right.
You know, so if it's a kind of not a huge media fund, it would typically benefit incumbents, but it's, you know, it could also provide media access to voices that would not otherwise be heard.
In my columns, I have advocated for the idea that you should be able to give unlimited amounts of money to anybody who runs for office with disclosure, but only to people in whose political jurisdiction you live.
Yeah.
You have to raise the money from, if you're a senator statewide, if you're a congressman in your district.
Final word?
I is how to get good people that I know to action. You know, because I go to things and I want to talk about these issues and they want to talk about, you know, the Bachelor or something. You know, I mean, it's just it's craziness. You know, that they're talking about things that are not real and do not impact them, and all the stuff that does truly impact them is just like they're overwhelmed.
Engage citizens.
Yeah,
They just don't know.
I agree that it's a problem of how to get people interested, you know, how to get them to pay attention to what the Constitution says and how the government works. But then I wondered, you know, what happened to the old discussion about a guaranteed job for people that wanted? Was that an issue
Employer of
like
last
30 years
resort.
ago?
Humphrey Hawkins,
What happened to that?
never been implemented. The Federal Reserve has a dual mandate of the stable currency and full employment. And until Janet Yellen was appointed, all they ever talked about was the first one. If you go back and look at Janet Yellen's first talk on the White House, steps of the White House with the president, when he nominated her, it was employment, inflation, employment, inflation, employment, employment, inflation, employment, inflation. And, you know, the Wall Street Journal has been picking away at her, saying, you know, why should you keep talking about that? You know, your job is to have sound money. But Humphrey Hawkins never went anywhere. And I agree with you. I mean, we had a employer of last resort law. There's no shortage of things that we need done in this country that would make the economy more efficient and improve it, strengthen it. So we're supposed to be out of here, huh?
So last word?
Oh, last
I think that everything that everyone has said is extremely valuable and important. There's so many veins that lead into this whole poverty consciousness and things that perpetuate it. Education is really important. If you go into an inner city school, government is not something that they're making you aware of. I mean,
We got their junior high.
I think it's a required course, but you
Yeah.
can't make
it's a
the kids pay
required course.
attention.
Well,
Yeah,
you
it is.
can't require kids to pay attention and they're not eating.
That's right.
Right.
I mean, so people have to be fed and people have to be educated. And you can't educate people who are hungry. You've got to feed them. And
Our
so
schools feed
that
kids.
has to be dealt with. And what's being taught in the schools, yeah, you've got government